Alright, so to usher in the new year, I purchased just yesterday about 30 books that I've categorized into 5 different categories. The first of which being reference text, then general collections of authors' specific works or same genre works. There's some history texts, there's some literary and poetic analysis text, and general classics. So the first, and which I believe I do have the least of, which is, no, that's not true, is a reference text. Here is the first one I want to show is Venice by Augustus. Sorry, I don't know why my brain is lagging. Augustus J.C. Hare. Usually I have no problem saying that name, but it's just a small little text with just a brief history of Venice and going over some landmarks. I think this is the sort of thing you reach for just to give yourself a bit of break off your current reads and to refresh your mind a bit. It's also quite nice. I don't know why, but it was priced more than even larger and more known texts at the bookstore I was looking at. So it must have some significant value, or it's just old. But I really liked it. I think it'll be a fun read. The second I have is the Complete Rhyming Dictionary, which is very interesting. It documents the endings of words, different forms of how rhyming is classified. It's difficult to explain to someone with minimal knowledge on the subject, but it goes in pretty great depth detail about how you're supposed to use it and really get the best use out of it, which I thought was very interesting. I don't really write poetry, but I think it should be helpful to appreciate how poetry is written and really gather how your mind sets into the rhythm that it does when you read something poetic. The last one I have is this Russian English dictionary, which I don't really need. There's a lot of really great resources online for Russian and English dictionaries, but you never really know, I guess, and it's just a really gorgeous book, and when I see anything that's Cyrillic, I get generally just excited and want to just pick it up anyway, so I was really happy to see this. It was the only Russian foreign language text at the store that I go to. I would have really liked to see more stores, but really none of them, all of them really pale in comparison to just the one that I generally go to. I mean, I don't think I would find any of these sort of things anywhere else. Around where I live, at least. So I think that's all for the reference text. I'll move on to the history texts, which have just about as much as the reference text. The first one I found, I was very excited to find. Unfortunately, there are multiple volumes, at least 2 which I know of, but perhaps more, and probably likely more, considering who this is about, but it's Memoirs of the Court of Europe, Napoleon Bonaparte. It's the second volume, not Napoleon Bonaparte the second. There's really not much to write about him, but I was just so excited to find this. Anything Napoleon, would love to have my hands on it, and has this beautiful picture of his coronation in the front. Unfortunately, this camera's not very good, you can't see much of it, but very excited to dig into that. Anything Napoleon, always reach for. And the second one, it's actually the first thing I found in that store. Maybe I wouldn't have gotten it if I saw it later, but I was happy to see it anyway, and I'm kind of glad that I did pick it up. And this one is called The Last Lion, about Winston Churchill. I do believe this is, again, another part of a set on Winston Churchill, and a bit rather incomplete, but I think still a good read either way. And there's one last one I have to pull from. somewhere else it's quite large. I hope it doesn't fall. Okay, it's falling. It's fine. I had mistakenly purchased 2 copies of these because I thought there was 2 separate volumes, or 2 volumes, and these were side by side one another, and I didn't check them because I was too excited. I saw the name and I really got rather frantic. The World of Leonardo. This one's really cool. It's just gorgeous. Really, really cool. It goes through his journey as an artist, environmental influences. I mean, really just a gorgeous book. Anything of this size involving Leonardo, you're sure to find something interesting. And of course his notebooks includes. So, very cool. Will be kind of annoying to read, I suppose, but it's not very long, and I'm sure very interesting to read. You'll probably blow right through it, I imagine. I've read some of it. It's written quite well. At least I'd like to think so. So that's that for reference in historical text. I'll just dive into the classics now before getting into the more boring part. Well, perhaps I'll just save the analytics for last. This one is really interesting. I've never heard of it. It's called the D. Caverly Papers by, I believe, Jonathan Addison is his name. Joseph Addison, sorry. That rings a bell to anyone. I saw this on its saloon, some little thing by itself. Like this Venice book, rather small, but it was priced rather highly in comparison to the other books in the store, so I looked it up. I can't find really much on it, only just what it is about, and there's just generally not much about it online. So, I don't know, I really, not the sort of thing usually I would be interested in, considering I believe it's about a sort of detective, but it's not fictional. I do think it is a social commentary, but I don't know, I've felt both drawn and not interested in it at all, but I suppose it's quite small, and probably like the Venice text, it's something you reach for just to clear your mind from what you're currently reading and find something else just for a brief moment in time. But anyway, the next thing I was quite excited about was this one, The Arabian Nights. Not in the best condition, but I think that's what I quite like about it. It's a huge stain on the back, but very, very, very happy to have found this. I had received a copy of Arabian Nights from my local library. Very cool map. Very cool. And I just never got to read it and had to return it and never came back to it. But I think this is really an essential read, and one day I ought to get to it. The next classic I have is Madame Bovary, and this is a critical edition, so it's not only a Norton critical edition, but the previous owner had some critique as well. There's various pages that have been annotated out, underlined and dissected, it seems. Like here, underlined quite a bit in this area. Not that you can really see it, but there's also a sort of preamble about, sort of maybe scholarly analysis of the text, and in the back you have a lot of responses from scholars about Madame Bovary and what it means, its significance, and things of that nature. I also found this interesting. This is perhaps the previous owner who annotated it. I don't know if that's doxing, whatever. I just think that's so cool. Ex libris. I suppose that means the former library of this person. There's so sort of like the artwork is just a crest with some cherubs. It looks like. I mean, it's just bizarre. I would never have imagined to find something like this, but I always wanted to read Madame Bovary, and I think this has everything that I would ever want from a classic. Formerly used, greatly appreciated, and annotated, as well as with some critique and analysis in the back. This next one I'm very, very, very excited for, and hope to read this year and very soon, is Look Homeward Angel by Thomas Wolfe. I've heard a lot of great things about this. I really do love Southern American literature, especially like Thomas Wolfe, and later we'll see some Faulkner. I really do love Faulkner. And I think Thomas Wolfe is quite similar from what I've heard. So, and Look Homeward Angel is just like an American classic. I think I really must read that, and I'm looking forward to reading it as well. I think it'll be a read that I really enjoy. Alright, but that's about it for the standalone classics. We do have a lot of collections. And I'll grab this one first because I was just talking about him. There's a collection of William Faulkner, 3 books. Let's see. There's Light in August, The Sound and the Fury, and As I Lay Dying. I do already have a copy of The Sound and the Fury, and I have already read As I Lay Dying, but I love that book. I'm glad I have another physical copy. I lost my other one. Not lost, but it's a long story. Light in August, I've never heard of, and it seems to be the largest of the 3. So, I do want to read Sound and Fury. Maybe I'll do a month of American literature. Usually I just do Russian and then one non-Russian book. But this is an Oprah's book club, like, collection. Personally, not too enthused by Oprah. But yes, I think it does have this little reader's guide. The portrait of William Faulkner here. And this quote by him in the front, the very famous quote about reading. Read everything. I wonder if you can even see the text. Anyway, it won't do much good if I keep it here because the camera is just not very good in reading this small text. But yeah, I think it just includes a small biography and a little bit of pretext around the novels, but it's really not that big. I might go through it, I might not even bother, but we'll see. Anyway, I was like really excited to find this. It's a charming little collection, and it's nice to have it's in good condition, really. It's in really good condition. It's nice to have a little set of Faulkner. And just perfectly in line with, in general, the theme of what I found in the store. A lot of American literature. A lot of English, a lot of American literature. That's really about it. Not much Russian anything. But anyway, this is another one that I found. Usually I don't reach for these, but I thought it was kind of cool. It's a gothic fantasy murder mayhem short stories. And this includes stories from Stoker, Kafka, Oscar Wilde, Edgar Allan Poe, and some more contemporary authors as well. Charles Dickens. So, I do like short stories. I have a whole collection of Penguin Black Classic short stories, and I like to have I have Chekhov's short stories in abundance, so I was quite hesitant to get this, but I think I'll enjoy it. Another one of those things just to read sporadically. The next collection I have is a collection of Thoreau's work. Let me just pull it out. Library of America. Thoreau, it includes, I think it does include only these 3. It includes Walden, Maine Woods, Cape Cod, and A Week, which I hadn't heard of. I do have a small copy of Walden. A very small, oh, here it is. It's a pocket copy. Look how tiny this is. I'm always amazed at how much larger I expect Walden to be, considering I have that little text. But, oh, a week is very, very short. It seems it's rather short. Okay, I'm wrong. It's longer than, it's longer. It's not that long, but perhaps the size of Walden. These are all pretty much the same size stories, and I'm rather quite excited to read them because I need to finish Walden. I enjoy it. I read it like every now and then. I'll just like go to reference the book and not really finish it. Like maybe once a month I'll read a passage from Walden, and honestly I kind of like that pacing. I don't like to just consume it all at once. It's a sort of in that way you kind of can just walk away from one passage and one concept and really nibble on it over time, I guess. And I have read Thoreau's other works, other smaller essays, and generally that's just how I end up reading him, because what he says is rather simple and almost straightforward at times, but it does bear repeating, and generally he does expand on concepts on a deeper level, and how the human nature interacts with these sort of concepts. And sometimes you don't really think about it to that extent, but he's able to shed a light on those sort of things. So I'm really happy to have found this. I hope then I'll just nibble on this throughout the year and gather some general insights. So this next one's interesting. It is the earliest English poems. I didn't expect to find something like this there, but I'm so glad that I had, because I really am interested in this era of literature, though I don't know so much about it. I don't know really how deep historically this runs. I know there's passages from Beowulf, which I absolutely adore. Beowulf. I love that poem. And very cool, we have some more annotations. I didn't see this even from the previous owner. Though I flipped through this, I hadn't saw that. Yeah, they're quite abundant actually. Oh, unfortunately this spine has been absolutely torn to shreds. So someone didn't open this correctly. There's that sort of method to preserving the book spine where you open it gradually. I don't think this previous owner had done that, or it was already in this condition. But I mean, absolutely everywhere these annotations. So that'll be fun to read through. That'll just be so much fun. I really love this. I don't know exactly. I believe this is the early Anglo-Saxon, which is general Anglo-Saxon literature. I want to get into the Poetic Edda and I believe Prose and Poetic Edda, if ever I can find it. But I do have quite a bit to read through anyway. So, but I think this will be a nice collection of works to compare it to, considering their sort of rival they sort of rival each other in a way. I believe so, if I'm not confusing myself. I believe the Norse and the Anglo-Saxons were rivaling each other and often went to war with one another. But I don't know so much about that era in history. Anyway, this next one I'm quite excited about. The Prince and the Discourses by Niccolo Machiavelli. Oh my goodness, I was so excited to see this. I usually read... I went through about the Prince the sort of the same way I went through Walden. I'll read through different passages as standalones, not even subsequently from one another. Just an excerpt from one chapter I'll read by itself, and then to another. 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 And then to anot this is just a period of history that I'm very fascinated by, and I love when these sort of noblemen in society dissect how society works, and histories of ancient Greece and Rome. Very just right up my alley, really. I mean, it's and Machiavelli. He writes with the best of them. I really do enjoy his writing, and I'm looking forward to the discourses because I hadn't read a thing about them. So I will get to this. I don't know when I'll get to this, but I'll definitely get to it. The next one I have is Plays and Stories by Anton Chekhov. I actually have quite a few things from Chekhov. I have another collection translated by Constance Garnett, and I do think she's a more preferred translator. However, I'm excited to read something from this new translator, who is Anne Donegan. I've never heard of her, but I'm really looking forward to see how she translates Chekhov. I mean, he's quite terse and not very very blunt, which is why I like the way Constance Garnett translates him, rather, and I feel like it's quite fitting to her style. So I'm curious to see, and I hadn't read really any of his plays. I just realized I haven't read any Chekhov plays. I've only read his short stories, and yeah, that's about it. But I want to get to reading The Seagull, which is included in here. What other plays are included in here? It's actually kind of, yeah, I guess it is larger than this other collection. There's Ivanov, The Seagull, Uncle Vanya, The Three Sisters, and The Cherry Orchard. I'm looking forward to this a lot. I love reading plays, and I just don't think there's enough attention onto plays these days. There's hardly any plays in the store that I could find ever, in multiple bookstores, which is a shame. I really love plays, and I mean, I just suppose we don't really go through that medium anymore. We have television or movies. Unfortunately, we don't really make any plays. The next collection that I have is a third volume of the series of complete short stories by D.H. Lawrence. I hadn't read anything by D.H. Lawrence before, but I feel kind of sad that this is only the third volume. I feel like the first and second volumes, generally, of these sort of collections, you get the best of the best. And I'm not sure if my introduction to D.H. Lawrence should be through something like this, a tertiary edition to his short stories, but I'll give it a try. Again, I quite like short stories. So I'm looking forward to going through it, but I don't have high expectations. However, this next one I have very high expectations for, and that is George Eliot collection. This includes Middlemarch, Silas Marner, Amos Barton. I've only heard of Middlemarch, and I've heard so many great things about Middlemarch. I wanted just that, but this is what they had. And actually, I'm quite happy because I think... Look at all this. This is all Middlemarch, by the way. This is Middlemarch. This is the other two stories. I think it's good to read other works from authors like George Eliot, where, at least in my experience, I've only heard of the singular work. Really get to know how this person writes and what differentiates their magnum opus from other works that they've written. So, and I mean, he's got to be a good writer, considering how prolific Middlemarch is. So I'm sure there's something worth extracting from his other works. I'm glad to be able to access them so freely like that. And that's it for the classics, the reference texts, the historical texts. Now I have a decently sized collection of analytical texts. And I'm just gonna go through the first few quite quickly because they're rather well known and not much to be said about them. The first is the Norton Anthology American Literature Edition. It is just pretty heavy. Actually, it covers a lot of the nuance in American literature from, I suppose I shouldn't say nuance, it's not any more nuanced than a lot of cultures or regions, but it covers a lot of facets of American literature from the very beginning, pre-colonial, from the colonial expansions, discoveries, from, I'm trying to remember the names of like the Spanish conquerors, the Portuguese conquerors. It goes from their text, writing their experience in America, and then it covers some Native American folklore. It covers some Native American, more contemporary text. It covers, of course, the great periods of American literature with Thoreau. It covers Benjamin Franklin. I mean, it really touches on a lot of, as it would suggest, a lot of American literature periods. I also have another edition of American literature from Norton Anthology, but I think this is the same one, just in an earlier period. I think this mostly covers post-colonial America up to like Thoreau. This one actually gets pretty contemporary. So I think like this is probably like in this. But what I usually do with these is I'll read the text like in full, and then they just offer like the analysis and critique of the work by different people, contemporaries or scholars, all kinds of people. It doesn't really matter. I mean, as long as they find it worthwhile, I guess. I don't know how... I mean, it is generally prescribed by colleges to read these Norton anthologies and their critiques, I guess you could say, their critique and analysis. So there is sort of, I guess, a general bias there in some cases, but I think it's not to say it's not worth it reading and seeing for yourself. I think even if you might not necessarily agree with how things are said or analyzed, you can at least synthesize your own experience and conclusions with somebody else's, and I think there's always a need for that sort of dialogue to analyze something that you don't necessarily agree with on something you're knowledgeable about. Because sometimes you may end up seeing something new and then thinking back to that position and changing where your stance is, or having a different perspective in general. I think that's really the value of reading. But here's the next one is Northern Anthology of World Literature. This one, I think it covers quite a bit of world literature from all sorts. I mean, there's Machiavellian here, which I'll be interested to read after I finish reading The Prince and the Discourses. I mean, he has some letters. There's also Montaigne. I always can never pronounce his name. His essays are in here. There's also Don Quixote, Shakespeare, all sorts, Milton. So this is generally the period in which of works that I like to read. So perfect for, in general, what I've collected so far. And this last Norton anthology is another mammoth. English literature. This doesn't go... I think it's much easier to make something like this for America, considering it is such a new country. But this goes back all the way to Blake, and then I think it goes Not so far into contemporary. Or no, I'm wrong, actually. It goes pretty contemporary. Yeah, it even ends in Brave New World, that author, I believe. Yeah, Seamus Haney, I believe that's the name, right? Maybe I'm thinking of somebody else, but yeah, it gets from Blake to some contemporary writers, so I'll be looking to this occasionally. Probably not as much as the American literature one. I don't read a lot of English literature besides Shakespeare. But on to another one. Back to American literature. This is a bit more interesting, actually. This is American tradition in literature. So I think I'll find a lot more to offer from this one than in the American anthology. It goes into pretty great detail about the various works, but it is sort of formatted in a very similar way. Yeah, I mean, you have Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Paine, Thomas Jefferson, Washington Irvine, I believe it's Irvine, Herman Melville, Nathaniel Hawthorne. So just a lot of good stuff here. Ralph Waldo Emerson, David Thoreau. I'll have to see how much I value these the more that I read these texts and refer back to them, especially analyzing this with the Norton Classics. I'm curious to see if there's any sort of overlap. Oh, look at this, actually. I believe it was published by Norton. That's why it's so formatted so similarly. But anyway, I think I'll get something different from this than the other American literature anthologies, but who knows, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I just scanned myself from another book, but it was like, what? It was not very expensive, so I would have picked it up anyway. I mean, it looks quite nice with the blue cover, the gold text. What do I care if I have no value, if only just to look at it? This one actually I'm very, very, very excited for. This one I have a lot of high expectations for. This is Henry Bloom's Shakespeare. It says, I should just open the cover. It's hard to see with the low contrast cover with the gold foil. Here it is. Shakespeare, The Invention of the Human by Harold Bloom. This one has a sleeve, actually. Let me find it. The sleeve is nice. I don't know the name of this portrait, this picture, sorry, rather. This painting. I don't know the name of it. I'm sure I can find it if I dig through it, but anyway, the reason I didn't keep this on is because the back is a picture of Harold Bloom, and it's just, I mean, you really get the portrait of a human in comparison to these two. I don't know why they did that. I can't keep this sleeve. I generally don't keep sleeves on anyway, but definitely not going to keep that one on in any case. I'm almost finished Titus Andronicus. I'm going to finish it today. And there's a chapter on each works chronologically and categorically. So I'm going to read Titus Andronicus and then refer to Harold Bloom's section on Titus Andronicus and see if I must read the whole Harold Bloom text to get the best value from that passage, or if I can just read a Shakespeare work and then refer back to Harold Bloom's text. Hopefully it's the latter, because I really, really want to read this, and I've had to read the whole thing without reading more Shakespeare. I feel like it's sort of a crime. I'll have to read more Shakespeare and then go back to that if it's the case that it must be read in completion. And I think this is the last. Wow, this must be the last book that I have. Yeah. And this is really cool. It's a McGill Harper edition of Masterpieces of World Literature in Digest Form. I just did not expect such a thing to be in a book like this, I guess. It's been a long time since we've had books issued to schools that look like this. Most of them have this weird plastic coating and full of graphics and whatever. But I can't imagine going to school with something like this. I mean, if you would, even if this is meant for school consumption or whatever. I imagine it is. I mean, I know Harper and McGill or whatever. I know Harper from having published a lot of school books, but this is really cool. It has I mean, just look at this. It's sort of formatted like the Oxford Book of Verses. They have Oxford Book of American Verse and English Verse, and it's sort of like that, where the Oxford Book of English Verse arranges them chronologically, but this arranges them by the name of the story, not even by the author. So Absalom by Faulkner's here, and then later you'll see another work by Faulkner further down, and it's just alphabetically ordered. I mean, there's Russian authors here. There's Dostoevsky, there's Tolstoy, there's Byron. I mean, it's just full of everything that I like. I love this war literature stuff. I wish there was more of it. It was really quite scarce. Mostly it's just American and English literature that I found there. It's just a shame. I think really there ought to be more. Oh, actually, there's one more thing. Ought to be more exposure to war literature in general. But that was quite a diamond, and I'm looking forward. I think I'll get a lot of good use out of it. I read a lot more literature tailored to that fashion in either case. But here's the last. This is analytical text. It is a Form and Value in Modern Poetry by R.P. Blackmer. He goes through the works of like T.S. Eliot, I believe Keats he goes through, and he sort of just dissects them and analyzes them. Ezra Pound and D.H. Lawrence, our old friend. So I will have some exposure to D.H. Lawrence besides his short story, after all, which is nice. This I'm really looking forward to. Again, I'm really trying to get into understanding poetry, especially rhymed verse. I don't really care for free form. I did probably because of a lack of understanding for it, but I think form and value will change my perspective on poetry. So I'm looking forward to that. But anyway, that's all I have really in terms of what I have found new. But I made a brief list of my 2026 must-reads, which is sort of flexible, but some things are certainly more concrete than others. I'm just trying to abstract. Oh my god. Sorry, my desk is absolutely crazy. All sorts of things on here. But anyway, I have a list of 2026 must-reads. And I don't think I'm going to change this. I don't want to change this. I want to do this beginning of the year. And then as I keep reading, if I want to add more, I'll just put it onto 2027. Or I'll just put it onto a monthly reading schedule agenda, if that's what it calls for. But right now for 2026, I have in my must-reads Ulysses by James Joyce, War and Peace, which I am reading a chapter of every day. I can certainly stand to read more, and even if I read one chapter for 365 days, I'm not even sure I'll get through it, but what I tend to do is the closer to the end of a work that I get, I tend to just go read ferociously, which I think is not uncommon. So, and War and Peace is quite deceptive in how much you think you're finished with, and I mean, we'll see. I would like to finish War and Peace this year, but I don't want to go through it quickly. I want to go through it slowly. Otherwise, I don't think I'll be as consistent because it's such a large work. Anyway, the next read I have is Fathers and Sons by Ivan Turgenev. I do really like his short stories that I read, and I want to go into more detail about Kazan at some point, but I need to read more of him. I find his life a little bit interesting from the few things I've learned, and I'm starting to really enjoy him. And I'd like to get my hands on the Sportsman's, what is it called? His collection of short stories, Sportsman's Stories or something like that. Oh, Sportsman's Scrapbook. I've been trying to get my hand on a copy on that, just browsing eBay. But anyway, the next thing I have is a collection of Pushkin's work. I have it somewhere back there. I actually think I see it in the camera. It's right above Dead Souls, that edition, translated by P&V, I think. Can't be certain though. But yeah, I want to read more Pushkin. I think some of his poems are simple enough for me to read it in Russian at this point, and I've tried, but I just need to read more of Pushkin. He has so much things written out there, I mean, between letters, poems. So I ought to read more, because I do enjoy him quite a bit. The next thing I have is the Golovlyov. I can't seem to say the name properly, and I don't remember the author. The Golovlyov Family. Please, I'm so sorry. It is by Mikhail. It's like if I read it, see it in Cyrillic, I'll be able to say it. But when you put it in English, I'm at such a loss. I had this problem with when I was learning Korean. Like if you put the romanization in front of me, I'm just absolutely at a loss. Let's see. No. Well, anyway. I'm not gonna say it. It's A Family of Noblemen, the Gentlemen Golovliov. It's by Mikhail. Who is this author? Mikhail Oh, good God. I'm just gonna put it in the description because I can't really be bothered to destroy somebody's name and legacy like that. Anyway, here it's rather a depressing story about a family. I believe I have some like inklings of what it's about, but I don't know concretely, and I don't want to say what it's about and then lie. So, but I hear it's rather depressing. It's about a family in Russia. I think they're in Russia, maybe not, but and the struggles of their lives. And quite fittingly, after that, I would like to read either The Brothers Karamazov or Demons by Dostoevsky. From him, I've only read notes from the Underground and short stories and Crime and Punishment, which I enjoyed. I really enjoyed those works. But obviously, if I want to consider myself a reader, I must read Brothers Karamazov. However, I do want to read War and Peace first. And if I can't get through that and feel like I have the energy to read Karamazov within 2026, I'll just read Demons. And I'll leave Brothers K to 2027. So either of those I'd like to read by 2026. And the last one I have is Frankenstein by Mary Shelley, which I ought to have been reading for so long, but I keep forgetting that I have. And I know there is that new movie out that people say is just terrific. So I like to read the book and watch the movie. But yeah, I think overall I'm quite happy with what I was able to get, but I do feel that I lack a lot of Russian literature and just essentials in Russian poetry, literature, which is a shame considering I have such a robust collection. I feel I used to have quite a large collection like this, but you know, when I was younger, but it's wasn't able to last. It went through some issues, unfortunately, and now I'm gradually rebuilding, and I'm very happy with my collection. It's very conflicting because I do really love what I have, and I wouldn't want to lose a single one of these books. And I still want more. It's not greedy, it's just I feel it's so hard to find what I want to read, like the very specific titles I want to read where I live. They're just kind of scarce. I had some luck with Pushkin and Chekhov, but I think because they, of course, Tolstoy Dostoevsky not so much, actually. I'm surprised by that, but yeah, I mean, those are the larger names, so it'll be harder to find the more obscure titles. But I'm optimistic, and I'm glad that eBay exists for that very reason. So, yeah, I look forward to digging into some of these and letting them sit. And probably in 6 months, I like to do this half a year. I may go back and purchase some more books.